Hey Toy fans, I'm D21 Beast and welcome back to week 2 of Project Geek Week. I'm kind of liking that title. I think we might go ahead and stick with that. But let's get down to topics here, guys. We have a lot of stuff that came out this week. First, let me say, my name is Robert. I'm D21 Beast on Twitter, and you certainly know me from my toy reviews that I do on YouTube at D21 Beast Reviews. With me today, I've got Greg.
Yoshimitsu47 on Twitter.
And with me today, I got JT.
Big Knights 33 on Twitter.
All right, well, welcome back, guys. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. I uploaded the show as a full hour and 7-minute show last time. You guys seem to be liking that. I considered breaking it up into parts, but I think I'm going to try to do it again as a full little over an hour-long show. So if you want to see a change to that, if you prefer to have the actual segments, let me know, and I'll definitely take that into consideration for future episodes. Our first topic of the day is actually going to be Ghostbusters. I think it was Monday when that news came out. Director Paul Feig actually tweeted out a photo, and it was just a 4-piece photo, no actual words or anything, of the cast members that had kind of been rumored for Ghostbusters for a while. And that was kind of his way of announcing this movie's happening and here's who your new Ghostbusters are. So the first thing we're going to hit are who the actors are. First, we've got Kristen Wiig. She's known, of course, for being on Saturday Night Live. She was in the movie Bridesmaids, which was a big hit. And she's done a lot of other movies, basically. She's been in the Despicable Me films, and she's done just a ton of Hollywood productions. Next up is Melissa McCarthy. She's probably most known to be as the woman Suki on Gilmore Girls. She was also on Mike and Molly, which is a sitcom that's still running. And then she was, of course, in the movie Bridesmaids, and I think she was in Tammy last year. So she's kind of making a name for herself in comedies right now. Next, we have Leslie Jones. I'm not as up-to-date on the current season of SNL. I honestly don't know a lot about this woman, but she is an SNL actress and apparently has quite the career as a stand-up comic. She's actually the oldest member of the cast. I think she's in her 40s already. And then finally, we've got Kate McKinnon. Kate McKinnon is another SNL cast member. She's known for being on the Big Gay Sketch Show, which ran for about 3 years. And then she's also an impressionist, so it'd be kind of interesting to see an impressionist in the Ghostbusters cast this time. I'd like to kick things off with my thoughts on the cast. First, I want to tell you about my personal connection to the Ghostbusters. I'm a big fan of the Ghostbusters. When I was a kid in kindergarten, I would come home. My dad had a Betamax player. I watched Ghostbusters almost every single day. I'm a huge fan of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I had the quotes down and everything. I mean, seeing that this movie is coming back really excites me. When Ghostbusters had a video game announced originally through Activision and then through Atari, I pre-ordered it day one and I waited with bated breath for that game to come out. I'm a huge fan. I really like the original cast. It had a lot of SNL cast members and guys from SETV in Canada. Basically, a bunch of friends got together. Dan Aykroyd had this idea, and they put it together, and I think that it was just kind of lightning in a bottle for them. So they made the first movie, and then the second one didn't do quite as well, and then we basically didn't get Ghostbusters for 15, almost 20 years. So with the new Ghostbusters casting, we do notice that there are a lot of female actresses in the cast. All female, yeah, basically. The whole thing is female cast. My thoughts on that are, I'm curious to see where they go with this. I really like some of the talent that's involved. I don't know Leslie Jones or Kate McKinnon as well, but I do know Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig. I think they're both funny. My biggest concern with Melissa McCarthy, she's kind of carved out a niche for herself playing the bumbling person, basically, in all of her movies. She's very crass, and she's very much into pratfalls, and we didn't really have that in the first Ghostbusters movie.
I was actually going to ask, the only names I recognize, kind of like you said, Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy, I've heard of both of them. I can't, based on what I see of the names so far, who do you think is going to be who, or who's going to correspond to who, if there's going to be a raid?
I've thought about that. I mean, they could go two routes, right? They could basically make everybody be who they were in the movie before with the same last names, which would actually kind of be fun if it's sort of a nod, but then you're kind of held up to the expectations of what each role was.
Yeah, you don't want to get locked into that.
Yeah, Stantz would have to be the science, well, the lower guy. Spangler would have to be the science guy. I mean, you know who's supposed to be who. So with that, I don't want a complete retread because I really like what Ghostbusters did before.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous about this movie because it's honestly at this point seems like it's coming together at breakneck speed after Dan Aykroyd couldn't get a third movie done for like the last 20 years.
They got the game.
They did get the game, so yeah, I guess that serves as sort of our third movie. I'm mostly just curious about this movie. I know there's a lot of people out there that are very concerned that it's an all-female cast. I don't know that that's so important as long as they're funny and they work together.
Yeah. This is something we talked about last week too. It seems like a lot of franchises are, if not entirely rebooting, at least refreshing the way that they're perceived by the fan bases, and switching over all of the Ghostbusters to be women is certainly a big change. and there's no way that movie can be looked at the same way. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a fresh blood type deal.
And it'd be kind of fun too if Janine Melnitz, I don't know that they've cast her yet, but if they get a man this
Get a
time,
guy,
some sort of
yeah.
man to be at the desk. So Jay, what are your thoughts on Ghostbusters?
I want to see how it ties into the original series. That's my biggest thing.
If at all.
If at all, yeah.
Yeah.
If they do that, if they do tie it to the original series and do that, and then I also want to see how they modernize it. There's been a lot of things that have come to date now and were older licenses or properties that they tried to update that didn't quite go so well.
Yeah.
So seeing like late 80s, early 90s continuity come to the teens of the 2000s, I want to see how they update like the proton packs, how
Yes.
they update the traps, and how they update the vehicles and everything. How does that fit into today? I don't know if kids are still scared of ghosts now.
Yeah.
So I want to see how that like kind of converts.
And
up to
Ecto 1
today.
had such a distinctive look in the past because it was kind of retro, but also a little bit, I don't know, it looked kind of ghostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they going to have it look the same? Is it going to be some new iconic looking car? I don't know.
And that's a good point. How many times, especially in that first movie, were they walking around the Sedgwick Hotel with walkie-talkies? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of like
Yeah.
a thing. They were chatting back and forth. So it'd be very interesting to see from a sort of visual design aspect
Yeah.
how that stuff looks. I think, honestly, the special effects from the previous film, despite the fact that they are older, I think they still kind of
They
hold
hold
up when you
up,
watch the
yeah,
movie now.
they hold up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the ghosts were puppets too, and
Yeah.
I don't know that it's immediately obvious when you're watching it. I mean, they put a lot of love, and everything I think came together just right for that
Yeah.
previous.
Also,
movie.
they used a lot of actual actors for a lot of the ghosts.
Yes.
Which really, like, you can't really replace an actor with a digital effect. I think an actual actor there's just something about movie magic with an actual actor
Right.
that doesn't, like, convert over well to a digital effect. So hopefully they use more actors and put people in makeup and costumes.
Right, you want to see like a CG fest basically with this movie. I mean,
Yeah.
Gozer the Gozerian, the Gray Lady from the library, even the Terror Dogs were all like practical effects, people
Yeah.
wearing costumes.
Yeah.
The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was a
Yeah.
practical effect. So
Yeah.
that was, so that'd be very interesting to see what they do. I hope this is a different enough story that doesn't feel just like a retread, I guess, is
What
basically.
do you know about Paul Feig?
Paul Feig is a director of comedies. He did the movie Paul, I believe, which was an alien film. I think he directed that, and it was with Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. He also was involved with Bridesmaids. I think he directed and possibly wrote that movie.
There's obviously a Bridesmaids connection
Yeah.
here. I haven't seen
Yes.
that movie, but I'm
I
assuming-
haven't seen Bridesmaids either, but
I have.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How
I
was
watched
that?
it with my wife. Very, very, very funny movie. Well written, well directed, I think. Kristen Wiig was amazing, but Melissa McCarthy just kind of stole the show.
Did she really?
Yeah.
Okay,
and
well, that's good.
I think she might kind of have a more predominant role in
Well,
Ghostbusters
that's what
anyway,
kind of
so.
brought all this up earlier, actually. I'm kind of guessing if you were saying she's more of a, I don't know if it would be appropriate to say, but a ditzier character, if she
Yeah.
might be more in the Bill Murray role in this upcoming
Okay.
movie as kind of she's smart but aloof maybe.
Okay.
Or, not exactly.
well, I suppose I could see that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Bill Murray had a way, though. He just played everything so deadpan. Like, he would say something completely smart-alecky, and then you'd be like, wait a minute, he just said that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it'd be cool if she could kind of fill in those shoes. I think those are also kind of big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Very big.
But we're all basically optimistic, potentially, about this.
Well, they pretty much, it's been 20 some odd years now almost?
Yeah.
I mean, they've got basically a clean slate to work with. So, I mean, as far as getting more Ghostbusters content, it's pretty much too late to get it from the original guys now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking forward to see what they do.
All right, well, let's move on to the next topic then. The Fantastic Four trailer also debuted this week. I think it was originally supposed to be attached to Kingsman and the Secret Service, but they went ahead and released it early. Let's go ahead and start with you, JT. What were your immediate thoughts of the trailer?
Immediate thoughts. I know last week I was saying I needed more content. I think this kind of filled my void.
Okay.
I'm actually kind of excited for it.
Good.
I like to see young Reed Richards, a young Sue Storm. I like to see Ben Grimm in the baseball hat with
Yeah.
with the bat. I like to see him kind of sporty. And then, of course, Johnny Storm working on a muscle car. Dude, that was awesome.
Right?
So that kind of like made my blood kind of excited. And I was like, yes, I'm very excited. I definitely still want to see more. I want to see the whole movie. I know it comes out
see
later
Doom?
this year.
Yeah, we didn't even
you
see
do
Doom
see
in the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't, but you do.
You do see, well,
You
it's from
hear
behind
him,
or
but you
something at
don't
some
get
point.
Yeah,
You hear
there's
his
some
voice.
allusions to Doom
Yeah.
in there, and I kind of want to see like his full, like I want to see him in
Wait, he
Doom.
looks-
Yeah, I want to see him in all of his Doomness.
Yeah.
And then like I really was I really was kind of thrown off a little bit about the capsule machine. I want to see what that kind of...
Is that how they're going to get changed?
That's what it looks like, right?
Yeah, it looks like they go to some other dimension, some other world.
Yeah, maybe the negative zone?
The negative zone?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And they're Inhumans.
Oh my goodness, that'd be so interesting.
So...
Marvel would love that, by the way.
They would love that. They would take that and run with it.
They would take it all the way to the courthouse. That's what they would do. Yeah.
I just want to see more. I'm excited though. I'm very excited. So.
All right, good. And Greg, what were kind of your thoughts on the trailer?
I completely agree. Like, I haven't seen the previous Fantastic Four movies, so for me, it's kind of the first time really for me. I mean, I guess I could go back and fill in those other movies, but I'm looking at this more of as the new Fantastic Four franchise for me, like the first one. The trailer didn't give you a whole lot to go with, like as far as story, what's really going on. You kind of got the general Doom wants to build a utopia, and the utopia doesn't entail our ideals, which is, what most villains with, actual thought process going behind it generally say. But yeah, I mean, there's still some things that aren't entirely explained. I did more research on some of the cast. So, I mean, I know more of what they're up to now. We talked earlier about it, but the Reed Richards and Johnny Storm leads both come from a pretty long, not necessarily time-wise, but they've been in quite a few films for their short careers. I already knew Kate Mara from House of Cards. The guy who's playing Ben Grimm is apparently Billy Elliot in Billy Elliot, which I didn't know.
No way,
really?
man. He's grown up.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's cool. That's cool.
So yeah, I mean, I'm very optimistic. They really pretty much can't ruin the franchise for me, so it can only be a positive outcome.
All right.
Yeah.
So, my thoughts on the trailer were largely optimistic. I mean, I didn't know what to expect going in. I do find it interesting that they're not going into space, it looks like, to get the cosmic rays and everything. They're kind of doing this in a controlled experiment on the Earth or maybe in another dimension, who knows. So from that point, I think it's kind of interesting. They're definitely, it seems like Reed's the science guy and everyone else, I don't know how they're involved. Sue looked like she might have been somehow involved with the science program too.
She looked like an air traffic controller or something.
She did actually, at one point,
I kind of pieced it together as they were working with some type of government agency with all the generals kind of sitting around in a panel.
Yes.
Kind of made me think they might have had some government funding, and maybe she had a tie into that.
That would make sense.
Brought her in, so I don't know.
Okay. And it should be noted too, towards the end of the trailer, there's a shot of all the heroes together.
Yeah.
If you freeze that shot, you can tell that if they're going to have costumes in this movie, they don't. I mean, they do. They seem like they have, I don't know what you'd call them, test suits or something, but they don't match, which is kind of interesting for the Fantastic Four. And Ben Grimm, I don't think we've seen this yet in a sort of a comic book movie, but he's not wearing a costume. He's just a big rock guy, so I find that kind of interesting too. So,
I do like the way they sculpted him, though. He's not quite rounded out like the older Fantastic movies. It made him a little more edgy, like rugged type looking, more monstrous, if you will.
Right.
He kind of looks a little more like when he was busting out of the rock.
Yes.
You kind of feel like this dude is a rock. He's solid.
Yeah, you can definitely feel that. It
Yeah.
wasn't just like a costume put on a guy. It's kind of like what it was in the last movie.
Yeah.
Interesting. I haven't seen, so was that really obvious?
Michael Chiklis, well, it wasn't so obvious, but I mean, it was a costume, I mean, you just kind of accepted that it was supposed to be rock skin. I will say the final thing on this is Josh Trank. A lot of people expected this movie to be sort of hand camera or shot like it was found footage. From the trailer, it doesn't appear that we're getting that. But that said, this is obviously some sort of laboratory test. So I think we're still going to get our chance to see him. If you're into the found footage idea, I think there's going to be a lot of shots of maybe test footage, or maybe, and the only way I can describe this is kind of like Stargate. When they would go into another planet, they would first send the map, and the map would actually show you what the planet looks like. Maybe if they are going to another dimension, we'll get a lot of shots of what, maybe from a robot or a camera's perspective, what the Fantastic Four are doing in this other realm. I think that could be used to great effect if he still chooses to go with basically the style of filmmaking that made him largely famous. So, moving on to the next topic, Marvel had a bunch of casting come out this week. The first one we want to touch on is David Tennant was cast as the Purple Man in AKA Jessica Jones, and likely any sort of Marvel projects moving beyond that. If you're not familiar with the Purple Man, he is Zebediah Killgrave. He first appeared in Daredevil #4 back in 1964. For the most part, his powers involve manipulation and mind control. So you can kind of guess what he might be doing with that. Purple Man was present in the Alias comic that Jessica Jones kind of got redefined with, and he more or less abused her mentally throughout that comic, so it would make sense that she would be in the show. My knowledge of Purple Man is not extensive. I haven't read a lot of comics with him. My first exposure to Purple Man was on the '92 X-Men animated series, where we actually saw. There was an episode where Cyclops goes back to his childhood orphanage, and we actually see Boom Boom, who wasn't regularly on the show. She was in the episode, and then Rusty, a guy from X Factor, a kid who could generate fire, was also in that same episode. But Purple Man was kind of controlling these kids, and he was kind of building up his own sort of child evil X-Men team. And Scott went back to the orphanage and kind of just fixed it all up.
So he's been around for a while.
He's been around for a while. I mean, 1964 was his first appearance, but then the second time I saw him was in Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And that episode, he was actually voiced by Brent Spiner, which I thought was awesome. And you could totally tell when he started talking, it's like, that's Data. But again, he was just kind of doing mind control stuff, and there wasn't a lot to him, and that show was canceled before its time, so I think...
Is he canonically immortal, or is that just he happens to exist in both of these time frames? Because we're talking to like 40 years ago, he was messing with Cyclops and...
Well, no, so the X-Men animated series was present day. The comic books have a sliding time scale, right? Yeah. So, I mean, for all we know, it was 10 years apart. And these are separate animated series, too. I don't know how old he's supposed to be in the comics. I'm going to guess he's somebody in his 30s, probably 40s. So, but it was still interesting. Those are my exposures, basically, to him, because I haven't really read a comic with Purple Man in it. But he was a big part of Alias, so he's going to factor pretty well into the show. So I'm kind of excited to see how that turns out. Now, I am not a Doctor Who watcher, but this guy was Doctor Who number what?
10, yeah.
Okay, so you watched 2 then.
Yes.
All right, so well then, guys...
It depends on how you count them, but anyway.
Well, then I'm going to step back from this one. I'm curious to know, because I don't think I've seen David Tennant in anything so far. Let me know, guys, what you think of him as... sort of a villainous, mind-controlling guy.
Well, that's the villainous is the interesting part, because I've only seen David Tennant in 2 things. One of them was as the Doctor in Doctor Who, and the other was I saw some of him as, I think, Hamlet in Hamlet.
Oh.
But in neither of those was he a bad guy, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to see him playing that role. I'm assuming we're going to get lots of fast talking. That's a David Tennant staple. There's going to be, I mean, I don't know... Based on how he played the Doctor, obviously this character is going to have to be completely different. I mean, the Doctor didn't have mind control. I mean, he wasn't a Superman. Well, like what's you say he has mind control powers, but is that his power or is that like a technological power? How does that work?
I think that's his organic power.
Okay, so he is a mutant.
I don't know if he's a mutant, but I can tell you in the old X-Men show, he would just touch somebody and he could basically control them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's the way it's portrayed in the comics. Again, I don't think I've ever read a comic with Purple Man in it. I just know him from those 2 animated series.
It's going to be very interesting to see David Tennant as a villain.
As a villain.
As the Doctor, he was a very good Doctor.
Yes.
My favorite Doctor.
Many would agree.
Yes.
Okay.
It's at moments you could see a flash of maybe him like. If he would want to take his Time Lord powers and go evil, he could at any moment.
I mean, not to get too into Doctor Who nerdage, but there was when he was on Mars, I think, and he was the Time Lord Victorious. And he basically exerted a little bit of will there. And he kind of a little bit villainous, a little bit, but
All right. And maybe we can see that side of him. And I know David Tennant, and I think he would commit to this role wholeheartedly.
That's exciting.
And when he does it, I think he's going to do it very well. So.
Well, I don't think he's gone after his appearance on Jessica Jones. I think he will probably be back on the Luke Cage show. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see. The next bit of casting we got, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this guy's name, but Daniel Bruhl. Or Brohl. There's normally an umlaut above the U. He has been cast, or seems to have been cast as Baron Zemo. Now, this isn't quite official, but IGN was reporting that there was some sort of casting sheet that came out on the movie, and his name was listed as Baron Zemo. There have been a few Baron Zemos. The first one was Dr. Henrik Zemo from Captain America number 4, or Avengers number 4 in 1964. The next one was Helmet Zemo. So that's the one that most people know. It's the one that was in the Ed Brubaker Captain America run recently. Honestly, a lot of the merchandise now is that version of Zemo. And Zemo's just one of those classic, really World War II era Cap villains. Zemo, his powers are basically technology-based. He has guns, he's got fight training, things like that. He's been cast in Captain America Civil War, which I think kind of is a bit of a curveball based on what we were expecting, because we thought that film was going to be about Cap and Tony and sort of the ideologies of Civil War. To throw in this sort of side villain, honestly, another kind of manipulator guy, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into the movie. What are you guys' thoughts on having this sort of new villain in this movie? Maybe he's just a little bit of him, but I don't know. What do you think of having this sort of extra villain added to that movie?
I don't know the current lineup for Civil War, so who are we looking at so far?
I don't know that a villain per se has been announced, but I think a lot of people have kind of been anticipating that Tony Stark, Iron Man, would be the villain of that movie.
Well, so you could actually look at this as the first villain announcement, then?
Assuming Tony is not the villain through and through, yes.
Okay, well, it doesn't seem to be being met with that kind of fanfare, I guess is where I was going with
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I don't know much about Baron Zemo, and I even had to look up Daniel Bruhl again to remind myself of
and
who
you've
he
seen
was.
Inglourious Bastards,
I have.
right?
I've
So-
seen Inglourious
Yeah.
Bastards. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think, what was it, Frederick Zoller is his name?
I think that's right, yeah.
Basically, he's the guy that, the main German guy that you kind of follow around for a little while. And, it didn't make much of an impact on me in that movie. That's not my favorite Tarantino movie.
Okay.
So I don't really have a whole lot, I guess, on that. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be my introduction to Baron Zemo, and maybe a new introduction to Daniel Bruhl after that movie. So,
All right.
I'm not too sold on having a villain in Civil War.
Okay.
I don't know if.
And I kind of side with you a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
I just kind of, Civil War is a big story, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted that movie, since we're not getting Avengers 3 being Civil War, which to me makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Then I'm worried that they're going to rush the story in Cap.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to take in with that, and a lot of heroes who showed up during that story.
Very much so.
And if they are working a villain into this, hopefully this is a post-credits thing or something like that to kind of set up future movies. But you're right. I mean, it just seems like we don't need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it'll just get lost somewhere. Like you said, with all the content from Civil War, I mean, you and I both read the comic
Yeah.
books. There's so many heroes that just end up in the Civil War, and the villains kind of take a back role
They do.
to what's going on with all the heroes. And so when you throw a villain in there, especially one that's not as predominant as maybe a bigger villain that has a bigger plot,
Yeah.
you kind of get lost. So-
Now, interesting to note about Civil War was that the government registration heroes, the guys who had registered with the government in the Civil War story, and we can talk about that another time if you're not completely up to the details on that, but basically Iron Man and his guys on his side enlisted the help of villains to help them track down heroes. They may have called themselves the Thunderbolts. I can't remember if they were called the Thunderbolts during Civil War, but like Deathstrike was on the team, Green Goblin was on the team. Zemo himself has been a Thunderbolt in the past, and the Thunderbolt is a team of villains that are basically more or less like the Suicide Squad. They've been captured, but they're given their chance to kind of go fight the good fight and make things not as bad for themselves down the road. So if the Thunderbolts are introduced into Captain America Civil War, perhaps that could be where Zemo fits in, but we still don't have the backstory or the rivalry with Cap. So.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot there that they're going to have to write in. I totally agree with you. I think it should have been maybe an Avengers movie with a little bit bigger of a budget to kind of fit everything in and get all the content they needed in, get all the pieces kind of lined out right with other smaller movies, and then put it into a bigger production. So
I haven't obviously read Civil War, so I'm curious from the perspective of two people who have read it, what, if anything, have they set up so far in the MCU movies? And secondly, if there's nothing you can think of, how are they going to possibly fit all of that story into one movie? Can they? Should they?
Okay, so as far as setup, I think the only real setup we've seen so far is that Tony and Cap are not fans of each other.
Yeah.
Also, I think the dynamic of Captain America the Winter Soldier that kind of shows that Hydra had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. would give the public a reason to distrust, much like we see in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, give the public a reason to distrust what S.H.I.E.L.D. is about. Maybe even further push the point that people need to be registered and held accountable for what they're doing. That's probably the most sort of setup we've seen.
Yeah.
The big catalyst for the S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Civil War comic book was that there was a team of heroes, the New Warriors, and their current version that existed in 2007. They were trying to basically do a reality TV show and capture a guy that was way above their pay level.
Yeah.
And they caught him, but then he basically set off this blast in New Hampshire or Connecticut.
It was it was in like a neighborhood.
But it was next to an elementary school basically, and he killed a bunch of kids.
Yep.
And that was when the media got a hold of it and said, these guys need to be on a leash. They're just doing reality shows and getting people injured. And the registration came up, and then it was the whole idea of we should register or we shouldn't for this reason or that reason, and that's more or less what led to the battling. Because the heroes that didn't register need to be brought in.
So that hasn't been set up at all.
No, but that might be what we get out of the events of Captain America the Winter Soldier, is the fact that, again, there's a lot to see in Avengers. Also, we know that from the trailer for Avengers 2, it seems like either Hulk's running amok and Iron Man's trying to stop him, or something's going on with Iron Man, but there's this giant battle in the middle of a city, and maybe they might actually start addressing the casualties.
Yeah.
Or the fact that Ultron's got all these like super powerful robots going around. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I think we're going to get a little more build up to Civil War and
What
in
movies
Avengers
come
2.
out in between Age of Ultron and Civil War would probably play into that too?
None, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I think we get... Oh, no, I'm sorry, Ant-Man. Ant-Man comes out, but I think Ant-Man... This is my personal prediction. I don't think Ant-Man's going to have a lot to do with the build-up to Civil War.
Yeah.
Especially given the production woes of that movie. I don't know that they had a lot of time to work all that in. Who knows? But my prediction is that Ant-Man's probably going to serve more as a prequel to Avengers events than it will. Even though it's a film set in the modern day, we're meeting the original Hank Pym.
Yep.
Something happened in his past that made him give up the mantle.
Yep.
And based on the information I've seen for Avengers, it seems like Tony and Bruce reactivate a program that the Ultron program. Like, they didn't think it up. I mean, Tony was looking for a way to replace the fact that he's not Iron Man anymore,
Yeah.
and they kind of found this old program. So I have a hunch that we're going to get sort of the origins of that program with Hank Pym in the Ant-Man movie. Now, I could be way off, but we still don't know a lot about what Ant-Man's about. And I think that may be intentional. Maybe they're waiting to give us a story trailer versus just a teaser trailer once Avengers 2 has come out. So we have a reason to get super excited for Ant-Man. Because right now, Ant-Man's a character that nobody's familiar with, really. So if they come out after Avengers 2 and say, hey, we didn't tell you before, but now this film is going to and really enlighten some of the elements of Avengers 2, now people will be super excited to go see this movie in the same summer.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I don't know that we're going to get a lot of Civil War buildup. We might. Maybe Hank did something that is just going to be another catalyst for the Registration Act. But it's essentially going to be Avengers 2, Ant-Man, and then Captain America Civil War next summer.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's still time for some more setup.
there's still some time for more setup, and of course Marvel's really good about leaving those teasers at the end of the credits, so that could also factor into all of that
they
too. But moving on, we have Rachel Taylor as Trish, or she's being called Trish Walker in the press release, but Patsy Walker, Hellcat she's kind of an on-again, off-again Avenger. First appeared in, she goes way back, Miss America #2, I believe, 1944. That was back in the Timely Comics days. She's honestly probably a character that was forgotten for a number of years, I would imagine, and then reused again. Her powers are really weird. She can sense magic, and then she's just really good at hand-to-hand combat. So she's a character who would fit well on a low budget like the Netflix television series. There's not a lot of flash to add to her. It's also interesting to note that she's been written into the story as Jessica Jones' best friend. Now, in the comics, Jessica Jones' best friend during the Alias comic was Carol Danvers' Miss Marvel. Marvel wants to do a Captain Marvel movie in a couple of years, so they probably don't want to introduce Carol Danvers on this Netflix series. They'll wait till they can give a big bang to her in her own movie. So why not sub in this character that is very TV budget friendly and still an Avenger character that people can get excited about?
Yep.
Now, if you're not familiar with Rachel Taylor, I honestly only know her from one movie. She was in Transformers 2007, and she was the Australian scientist who was working with Anthony Anderson.
Too obscure for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I saw her picture, I instantly knew that's the girl from Transformers.
Oh.
So she was the one who were there in the interrogation room. Anthony Anderson's like, they left us a plate of donuts because they want to test us, and then he goes and eats the whole thing.
Yeah.
And she's frankly annoyed with him most of the time, but she's one of the people that realizes that there's a secret code and the signal that Blackout left at the very beginning of the movie. So somewhat of a bit part. That's all I know her from, though. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the actress.
No, I just remember that piece in Transformers.
Okay.
I don't even remember that piece from Transformers.
Okay. So it's probably safe to say that she is not going to have the Australian accent in the show. But outside of that, I just don't know enough about her acting ability. I will say she doesn't show off a lot of acting talent in Transformers. I don't mean that as a slight. It's just she didn't really get a chance to do anything. So I'm mostly just kind of curious to see how this evolves, but it's also cool to see that there's another Avengers character that's being introduced into AKA Jessica Jones on another character that could potentially cross over with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yep.
So
filling out that roster.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So, we'll get our Mockingbird and our Hellcat in on some sort of Avengers television team at some point.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, well, if you guys have any thoughts about that, that covers all of the Marvel movie casting for the week. The next thing we want to touch on is Uncanny Avengers #1. Now, I'd kind of like to do a comic book each show if we can. Just one book, maybe talk about it, get people interested in reading the stories that these movies are based off of and what's going on. But today we have Uncanny Avengers #1. This is issue #1 of the relaunch of the book. Uncanny Avengers originally started about 2 years ago with Rick Remender writing, who had done Uncanny X-Force, and the art on that book had been done by John Cassaday, who did the Star Wars book that we reviewed last week.
Yes.
But this book is actually art is done by Daniel Acuna, and Daniel Acuna is known mostly, well, not mostly, but partly as a cover artist on comic books for Marvel and DC. His work includes Flash, Uncanny Avengers, Uncanny X-Men, and that's really kind of where I know him from. He's got sort of a painted style. It's also worth noting that Rick Remender, on top of being the Uncanny Avengers and Uncanny X-Force writer, he also wrote the story for Bulletstorm, the game from EA and Epic. So I thought that was kind of an interesting touch there for any of the gamer nerds that are out there watching. But Uncanny Avengers #1, as with any #1 comic book, they're trying to get you on board, trying to get you involved. This particular team features characters that are prominently going to be featured in Avengers 2 Age of Ultron. We've got the Vision on the team, we've got Scarlet Witch, we've got Quicksilver. Captain America's on the team, but it's still the Sam Wilson, I like to call him Captain Falcon. So I know.
Or Falcon America.
Or Falcon America,
Falcon
you know.
America.
So, but the team also includes Sabretooth, who's supposedly, possibly a good guy after the events of Axis. Brother Voodoo, Rogue, who's probably the only original member aside from Scarlet Witch that's on this team from the original Uncanny Avengers. And I believe that rounds out the entire roster.
But we're only going to see Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Vision, and Falcon in the movie.
I don't think we'll see Falcon in Avengers 2.
Really?
Yeah, I think Falcon, the next time we see him, is going to be in Captain America Civil War.
Yeah. Definitely won't see Rogue, though.
No, we won't. No one will see Rogue. But the reason I thought this book would be interesting to review is that it is a #1, and it features characters who are going to be showing up in this summer's Avengers movie. So I think, again, corporate synergy with Marvel. They have a new #1 with characters featured in the movie. Actually, new characters too. So I guess I'll start with my thoughts on the book. I thought it was pretty interesting. The story kind of follows Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver have just discovered that they are no longer Magneto's children in the storyline Axis. We kind of briefly touched on that last week. They are in Otherworld, which if you've seen the Ultimate the Spider-Man Unlimited cartoon from the 90s or read any sort of high evolutionary stories, Otherworld is just another Earth out there where there's anthropomorphic characters. And it's not the first time that we've seen the Maximoffs in that sort of setting. So they're trying to figure out who their father actually is, and they've gone back to Counter-Earth. And because they've essentially gone rogue, Rogue and her Avengers are going after them to see what's going on. As far as an introductory story, I really enjoyed it. I like seeing Sabretooth supposedly being a hero, but at the same time, we've seen this before, so I'm hoping it just doesn't have him flip out and be a villain. But it was great. Rick Remender remembers things that I haven't seen since the 90s, like Sabretooth calling girls frail. That kind of took me back when I saw that, and then Rogue immediately comments on it. So I think the writing's really good. I like the artwork. Daniel Acuna, wasn't a huge fan on Uncanny Avengers. It seems like every time he did the book, the previous volume, it was always nighttime, and I just felt like he does well with nighttime scenes, but I don't want the Avengers to constantly be dark and at night all the time. So we actually got some outdoor lit shots, which I thought looked really good. And the Vision, the only time I've really read the Vision was Avengers Disassembled, and then I read Young Avengers, and that kind of doesn't really count as a Vision story. So I was kind of surprised to see that the Vision was as human as he seemed, whereas I think even smart Alex a couple of times. So that was interesting to see. But overall, I like the book. I like where it's headed. And let's start with you, Greg. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, as a non-regular comic reader, I thought it did a really good job introducing all the characters. I noticed that and I know most of these characters. I had not met the voodoo guy before. But they did a good job of saying their name, at one point I think Rogue referred to Captain Falcon as Sam, which was helpful for clarifying for me, since I had no idea this was even going to happen, and suddenly it's like, wait, that's Falcon, but he's wearing Captain America's clothes. So it helped to keep some of those things straight. I don't really know the story behind Vision and Scarlet Witch being together. But that was pretty strongly hinted at.
Yeah.
What else? There were some things I didn't like very much. I've already discussed it with you, but there's no Counter-Earth. We would know. Part of the story, if you have not read it, is that they find out that there is they know already somehow that there's a Counter-Earth opposite our Earth on the other side of the sun that we never see because the sun's always in the way or something. I thought that was silly. I also thought it was kind of silly, this notion of inversion. Like Sabretooth has been inverted, so now he's a good guy.
Yes.
But that kind of trivializes, in my mind, the motivations of the villains to have them portrayed as somebody who's simply got an inverted moral compass that can be flipped with magic or technology. I don't know. I like thinking of Sabretooth as somebody who is bad for a reason and not somebody who's bad because he has bad biology or something to that effect,
Okay.
So I didn't like the idea of inversion, but that's not necessarily new to this book. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. Yeah, you got Quicksilver on his quest to find out more about his real parents. The comic kind of ended on a cliffhanger with all of them half in Counter Earth, and some of them, like the voodoo guy, you don't even know where he is. And then there's these new men, which I'm sure you have something to say about that. But yeah, that's. I mean, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, let me, before I toss over to you, Jay, I just want to mention really quick. The New Men, I think, is a name that's been used before. It's just kind of the lackeys or the superpowered people that have worked for guys. I don't think they're always for the High Evolutionary, but he's used a team like this in the past. Also, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, I should have realized, they are more or less the reason that House of M happened, that Avengers Disassembled happened, that everything leading up to Civil War happened.
I think there was a reference to House of M in this comic, too. There was something I think Rogue said.
Rogue is not a fan of Scarlet Witch.
Well, she said something to the effect of how Wanda has been through so much, or something like very strong reference to a big event.
A brief sort of snapshot of what's involved there is, at one point in the past, the Vision and Scarlet Witch got married. They had children. He's a synthetic man, completely robot through and through, but they had children. They had twins, I want to say, or at least 2 different children. And then at some point in the Avengers story, the children turned out to be fake, surprise, and Scarlet Witch lost her mind.
Yeah.
And as part of this losing her mind, the Avengers were broken up. The Vision was killed, Hawkeye was killed, Jack of Hearts was killed, like a bunch of characters back in the Avengers Disassembled story that were broken up. And then immediately after Avengers Disassembled was House of M. And it was Scarlet Witch completely altering the reality of everything.
Yeah, I remember that.
To where she was like a princess in Magneto's castle. I believe the castle may have been in Africa. And it was like a whole sort of world turned on its head story.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for a few guys who realized something wasn't quite right, they wouldn't have reversed everything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the backstory. The House of M ended with the famous words "No more mutants" from Scarlet Witch, which left all the mutants in the Marvel universe who didn't have their own ongoing comic book depowered.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the animosity comes from. Rogue's a little distrustful of Scarlet Witch because of that and everything that has kind of gone on.
She knows how powerful and how crazy she can be if she just decides to snap.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of powerful, I don't think you're actually this far yet, but there was a guy at the end talking to, was it Rogue?
I don't know who that was.
Who basically said that she, I think he was making references to Proteus, maybe?
Oh,
where
no.
he was saying that she had this
Simon
spirit
Williams.
of,
And this is another fallout of Axis. Apparently, Wonder Man, who had joined the Uncanny Avengers at the end of Volume 1, his consciousness, his ionic consciousness, I guess, was absorbed by Rogue at some point during Axis. And I haven't read Axis yet. So
awesome.
When I first read that, I was like, wow, I guess they're doing the Carol Danvers story and giving Rogue powers again, you know, like flight and whatever.
But then he's like, nope, I pulled that out of you.
Yeah, and she's kind of shocked. So I'm not sure where that's going. That was an interesting sort of play.
Either,
but based on what you've read, how do you like this story?
I'm enjoying the introduction. Very good. You can tell that they're really starting over and fresh with Pietro and with Scarlet Witch. You can just feel like, okay, these guys, there's something about these two that's gonna end up happening that's gonna just take us on a wild ride in the future. So I'm very excited about that. Seeing Vision kind of forefront. I don't really get to see him very much in the forefront.
Yeah.
He kind of plays a backseat to the bigger heavier hitters, I would say, in the Avengers team. But seeing him more forefront, and then obviously seeing our Captain Falcon, man.
Yeah,
that's a lot of fun seeing Sam dressed up as Cap. I'm really liking that. I want to see, of course, Sabretooth go super feral and just destroy anything.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that stuff happen. I'm liking what I've read so far. I know I'm definitely going to have to read more with all the plot uncovers, and I want to see more about Dr. Voodoo. I have no idea what's going to happen. I want to see how the team works as a team. If it's just individuals exploiting their powers and then coming back, or is it going to be full-on team action? I want to see more of that. So.
Sure. I think we might get our chance by the end of the story with the New Men to see these guys kind of square off and show off what they do.
It kind of it felt like, okay, are these guys going to be just as equally as powerful? Because you see the first guys running just as fast as Quicksilver, and you're like, oh, wait a second, these guys could be,
And let me say something about the High Evolutionary and his mutates, or whatever they're calling him. I really don't want the new backstory for Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver to be that the High Evolutionary made these guys. I'm really worried that that's going to be the story. But we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah.
There's one other thing we haven't mentioned yet from this book, and I think it was Vision, who, when they all go to Counter Earth, he appears and There's a green woman there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She's totally familiar with who he is, and
Yeah.
there's even the illusion that they have children. I didn't know what that was about either.
Okay, so you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That
I'm
was
curious to see where that
definitely a
goes too.
cliffhanger,
Yeah.
Whoa.
So
It was the comment was he asked who she was, and she implied that he knew who he was, and he was like, "You know who I am?" And she's like, "I wouldn't be a very good Eve if I didn't know my Adam."
yes,
Or something
that
like
was
that,
that was the
yeah.
line. Yeah. And I think
Okay.
behind them is like a family shot of them
Yeah,
with their
a shot of
children.
those
so,
two together, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is very strange.
So, but liking this book so far, definitely recommend it, guys. Give it a read if you see it. So, moving on, we're gonna hit this week in Geek TV. The first thing I think I'd like to talk about, it's last on our list, but I'd like to start with this since we all just watched it, is Agent Carter. This is the 4th episode that they've had out so far, and we got a lot out of this episode.
Yeah.
We had kind of predicted last week with the introduction of Dottie that she was going to turn out to be a member of the Red Room program and be an assassin, and I think we got that question answered this week in a pretty definitive way.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty entertaining to see how that played out. It seems like I can't remember the name of the guy who runs the SSR.
I was gonna look that up earlier.
Yeah, so he put his like second in command in charge while he went off and went to Russia, I believe it was, to speak to a German who they thought was connected to Stark's weapons dealings, and he made a proposition to this guy that almost made it seem like he might maybe be Hydra or somebody who's not being completely honest with what's
he's
going on.
definitely not a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting to see. Sousa, I think, is definitely getting his chance to shine. The guy who has an injured leg. Now, what I thought was interesting was they didn't really explain why his leg was injured. You just kind of assume he came back from war, but they almost made it seem like it was a birth defect in this episode.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of hoping that was a joke or a stab. I kind of like to think that this guy's somebody who served his time and is basically come back from war and is just completely put upon. I think that makes it more relatable to Peggy Carter in that way.
Yeah.
So, but I really think that he's going to figure out that Peggy Carter's the one helping Jarvis before the show is all over with. And it'd be interesting to see if he whistle blows on her or if he kind of helps her by the end of it all.
Yeah.
We saw Howard Stark this week. Howard Stark's kind of showing that he may not be completely honest about what's going on. Roger Dooley, that's the leader of the SSR.
There we go.
So he's definitely one you want to keep your eye on, and I think I really like the turn that character took this week. So overall,
definitely give him a lot more character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They did.
So overall, though, I'm a big fan of what we saw this week. Again, with the Dottie, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the scene where Peggy's has to sneak Howard into her apartment complex. I mean, that was played for as many laughs as it should have been.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah,
I don't think there's a woman left on her floor that Howard
right, yeah, that Howard hasn't slept
Except
with.
Dottie.
Except for Dottie, yeah. So, a big fan. But yeah, let's start with you, JT. What are your thoughts on the episode?
Very, very exciting. I was like, I want to see more. I remember at the end of the episode, you're like, what? That's it? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. We gotta have more. We gotta have more. My comments exactly, man. I thought seeing Dottie kind of just like, we saw her true colors, and we're like, she picks up the gun, and you're like,
yeah, they kind of make you think that this assassin's gonna be this bad guy to deal with, and she's like, no, I'm worse.
Yeah, done. And then seeing Howard Stark and him kind of being a little schmoozing on the girls, and then his plot just kind of thickened a little bit with the what we think is an EMP pulse, but it's not an EMP pulse, but it is. And then you're like, oh, that's kind of a nice little reveal there.
I think let's go ahead and say spoilers here, because we've already said kind of a lot about the episode. But yeah, go ahead and let us know, what was this device?
Well, the device actually, when Agent Carter opens it opens up into a capsule that has a vial of Steve Rogers' blood.
Yes.
So we know for instances there's going to be some type of like coming back to that. She ends up hiding it in the wall. I think we're going to see Sousa find out that she's the secret agent, and then maybe he comes in and finds out something about what's going on with all that. So.
And I just had a thought.
Yeah.
What if Sousa somehow ends up with this blood at the end of the series and fixes his leg?
I had an even crazier thought.
What's that?
What if Peggy ends up with this blood post Winter Soldier, and old
Oh.
Peggy can somehow become young.
She's had it
Peggy.
this whole time.
Yeah.
That would be fan. Yeah, because she was in the Winter Soldier. She was an old lady. She was dying.
She had Alzheimer's.
Yeah, she definitely was not well.
Yeah, so
That's amazing. That's a way they could totally bring
Well,
her
I was
into the
thinking,
Marvel.
they could have her be in the modern cinematic universe.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
That's
a great
kind of
idea.
out there.
That-
but,
No,
yeah.
man,
That's out there.
Let's hope that's true, because I think
Yeah.
she's really kind of shown what she's made of in her mettle on this show. And
Yeah.
honestly, when this show is over, I don't know that there's gonna be a lot more opportunities to flash back to post World War II and see what Peggy's
Yeah.
up to. So if people like Haley Atwell, I mean, this is a great way to get her into the present day.
I don't know if they'll do this, but I mean, if they at least had the series end ambiguously with her still with the blood, then you could have her come back in the 40s or in the present day, one way or another. It would still have to be after Winter Soldier, I'm pretty sure, since
Yes.
she got that old.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
No, that's
that would be interesting. As for my thoughts on the episode, I think for sure Dottie is the big thing of the episode, the big reveal. That's what people will be talking about. We saw also a little bit of the degradation of Jarvis.
Oh, yeah.
We did.
He
not
actually
only-
didn't feature that much in this episode.
and also the Stan Lee cameo. But
yes.
That was great.
but we saw Jarvis both lie anxiously, give himself away, and then indicate to Howard that he's not terribly comfortable with what they're doing, which we haven't really seen that much of yet. He's been a little bit out of sorts, but never of the type where you thought he might not keep going. You know?
Oh, yeah.
So that was interesting to see. And then yes, the Stan Lee cameo. I thought that was a great scene. So you had the three of them in their chairs. Jarvis sits down. Newspaper comes down, and Howard's there.
Yes.
And then Jarvis gets up and leaves. And then Stan Lee's there, and yeah, I mean,
And I gotta say too, like with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there's an episode where Stan Lee appears, and Marvel and ABC were so worried about the ratings of the show and trying to pull people in. They made a big press announcement about Stan Lee being on the show. He was only on for like 5 seconds on a train, but like the teaser was out. You saw the shot before, like an image of it before the episode actually aired. You knew it was coming, so it wasn't as special when you finally see him. You're like, oh, there's the moment we've been waiting for. But with this show, I'm on the internet quite a bit. I didn't see any sort of teaser or announcement or anything. So when Stan Lee shows up behind the newspaper, I thought that was just amazing. That was a great way to bring him in.
That was.
Can I read that sports?
Yeah, right?
Probably one of his longer cameos in
I would
anything
say.
I've seen.
Yeah. So, that was a great moment. So
Great.
overall, I think we're really excited about this episode. Next week, Peggy's going to Russia, and the trailer would have you believe that Dum Dum Dugan's showing up, but of course, there's
We've
an
seen
argument
him, yeah.
between Peggy and Tony. We've been seeing in the teaser for next week for like the last 3 weeks.
Which
We
finally
got that
happened
this
in this
episode. So
episode.
we may not see Dum Dum next week, but they're halfway through the
Yeah,
series
he was
at this
actually in
point.
the teaser last week too, wasn't
He
he?
might show
So-
up at the end of the episode
There you
next
go.
week.
Yeah. So, optimistic about the show. Can't wait to see how it's going moving
Quite.
forward. Let's go ahead and hit up Arrow, Greg.
Well, these guys are still not caught up yet, but this week on Arrow, we still more transition. We had Felicity from last week who said she was going to quit the whole Arrow / Adam / whoever she's associating with, and not surprisingly, we had the mobster attack on Town Hall, which kind of convinced her that if Ray's going to be out there in the public spotlight, it's better for him to be out there in a giant mech suit than as himself. I think they even explicitly state that at some point. We also see more with Maseo and Tatsu out in Nanda Parbat, and I have to say, do you know where Nanda Parbat is supposed to be?
I don't. I'm not as up on DC knowledge.
Because my thought process this whole time was Nanda Parbat, that's like in Tibet or somewhere way off on the other side of the world. But then we saw last week, Malcolm Merlin goes from Starling City, which I think of as like a New York or a New England type city or something like that, goes from there to Nanda Parbat and back in like one episode. So apparently it's closer than I think it is. But
well, I mean, we did see in The Dark Knight Rises that Bruce Wayne could get out of
That's true, yeah.
jail cell
But-
like halfway around the world and come to Gotham
Of
in
course.
about
and still
half
has
an hour.
time to paint. Still has time to paint a giant flaming bat on the face.
Exactly right. Yeah. So,
But yeah, so we saw more with Maseo and Tatsu in Nanda Parbat. We saw them. Now I'm not that up on their canon. I believe they're both supposed to be DC characters that haven't come into their own yet. But yeah,
like League of Shadows characters, or
I don't believe they're League of Shadows characters, but again, I don't know. In the
Okay.
show, they are.
Okay.
But or at least they're associated. But yeah, I don't know that their characters are League of Shadows characters in the comics. But we saw more of them get to show their stuff when they fought off the League of Shadow Soldiers. And then at the end, we also had the, I suppose, somewhat surprise reveal that Maceo is keeping tabs on Thea as well, which
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, we don't know where that's going to go, and we don't know how committed he is to that anyway. We know he already is willing to defy Ra's al Ghul, so it's possible him keeping tabs on her is just part of his keeping track of someone for Ra's, but still defying him on the side. Anyway, yeah.
All right.
That's mostly what happened this week. I can't think of anything else overtly.
Okay. Well, pros and cons of the episode then?
I'm still waiting to see more. I mean, I wasn't convinced at the mid-season that Oliver was dead, so the fact that he's still alive and still doing stuff is not a surprise. We still haven't seen Ray in the OMAC suit, which I would really like to see. We're getting closer to Thea and I guess Thea finding out about anyone, about her dad, about Oliver. She does know about Roy. She actually told him at least, and in the fairly obvious way, I see this guy out there, the red hoodie. I mean, that's you, right? So yeah, she knows about him at least. But yeah, I would say Arrow's still in the transitional phase currently.
All right. Okay. And did you see the episode this week?
I haven't seen the episode this week. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that then, sounds like you're giving Arrow a recommendation still.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to Flash.
Flash. This week was about the introduction of basically an entirely new character, and I can't remember his name now. I should have looked this up, but it was a former associate of Harrison Wells, and I believe that, and I'm not up on the comics, but I believe this is going to be set up for Cisco's eventual personality as Vibe, because the guy that we met in this show used sonic gauntlets that fire sound waves, which, as I understand, is what Vibe does.
Yeah.
So, and I think we even saw Cisco toying around with the gloves at one point, but then the guy comes back and takes him. This former associate of Harrison's was one who felt off-put by Cisco when Harrison brought him in. There's definitely some antagonism going on there. He also forced Harrison to reveal what Harrison said was his secret, that he knew that the particle collider would have issues when it turned on. I'm guessing he's talking about other secrets because Harrison's got lots of them. So we'll have more secrets coming up. And yeah, I don't expect it's the last we'll see of the new guy whose name I can't remember. But I don't think the show gave you any indication that we were done with him. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about Flash.
And that show's still chugging along and you're still
absolutely
into it, okay?
Yep. There's
stuff.
You're watching Flash?
No.
All right. Well,
me and DC, like,
that's all right.
I have a love for DC, but I also like the times of the television shows just catch my weeks off guard.
No, that's
and
cool,
so,
man.
DVR all the way, man.
Well, and for this next show, Gotham, I made honest efforts to watch that show this week.
Yeah.
Hulu just wasn't interested in helping me, so I couldn't ever get the episode streaming. It kept giving me an error code, and I'm still waiting to hear back on that. So hopefully I can be caught up on Gotham next week, guys. But tell me what you think about Gotham and where it's headed right now.
So just like I said last week, Gotham is probably still the show I'm most excited about right now. And I wouldn't have expected to say that just because I'm not a DC fan. I mean, if anything, I would say I'm more of a Marvel fan. But I feel like they're really doing it well on Gotham. And this week we got some more of the fallout of Fish's attempt from last week to seize power. We saw Fish in jail, and then Butch helped get her out. Now, we don't know how Butch got away, because at the end of the last episode, he and Falcone and all their men were there in Fish's place. So I don't know how Butch got out. I don't think that'll ever get addressed. But we saw the Penguin with his mother in Fish's former house, which of course could be called, I say house, it's her lounge, possibly the Iceberg Lounge.
I'm waiting for that to show up.
Yeah, they haven't dropped the name yet,
Yeah.
but you know it's coming. And we saw a potential origin story for Butch as someone, because Zaz shot him and then says, let's take him back to my lair and see what we can do with him, basically.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going to happen there. We got a little bit of a reveal with Harvey and Fish, who are apparently intimate in some way.
Interesting.
And Fish...
Is Harvey married on the show?
I think he may have a wife on the show,
Okay.
but Harvey's got his own morality.
Okay.
He's always had his own morality. But, yeah, so he and Fish are in some sort of relationship, and then he shipped her off So she's gone for a while, and I'm guessing we won't see her for probably most of the rest of the season, maybe all of the rest of the season. We'll see.
Okay.
I figure she's gone for a little bit to give Penguin time to do stuff. Maybe time for Nigma to come around and be more Riddler-like. Except that we also saw this week his love interest, or his would-be love interest, Kris Kringle, gave him more acknowledgement than he's gotten at all so far. So we may still be putting that on the back burner a little bit. I'm curious how you guys, and you haven't been completely up on the show, but how do you think they're going to do the transition from young Bruce to Batman Bruce?
Look,
is there going to be a time skip and a new actor? Are they going to try to be on the show for or on the air for 7 years? Or
one of the problems, I think, and I can only compare it to Smallville because that's probably the closest thing we've seen so far, is that Smallville ran for 10 years and they had no idea when the show started that they were going to go for that long. Mm-hmm. If Gotham goes for 10 years, you can have Batman by the end of the show and have the same actor the whole time. Yep. But there's a lot happening on Gotham right now. My biggest concern about this show is that all of Batman's villains get rounded up and beat by Jim Gordon before there's ever a need for Batman.
Yeah.
So I think it would be really interesting if they go one season, maybe two, and then they do have a jump forward in time. Maybe it's only 2 years. Maybe if the kid hits a growth spurt, they can pretend that 2 years has passed and he's a little bit older. But they can only do that for so long. So at some point, let's say this is a 5-year show, it would be really great to see adult Bruce kind of step up and take charge.
So
but
you think they're going to do a time skip?
I would have to assume they're going to.
I was thinking another option could also be they have a younger Batman. I mean, they're writing their own lore here, basically.
True.
So they could. I mean, I don't think we'll have the kid on the show now, full Batsuit and everything. But he could be more Batman-like at a younger age, and I think he's already done that to some extent. With
he's definitely doing detective work
yeah,
right
exactly.
now. I mean,
yeah.
So they could continue more with that. I would be sad to see a time skip just because I know if they do that, they're going to get some new actor that doesn't look enough like the current Bruce for me. And I don't know, it'll just break it for me.
How are they going to show his points of training too? Like his physical training and when he learns his martial arts and his stealth capabilities. How are they going to show that?
I would absolutely love, because if they can keep the show on fire the way that I think it is for a while, it would be amazing to have in season 5, 6, 7 an older Bruce actually turning into Batman. Can you imagine the second revival the show would have?
Yes.
At that point?
Yeah. Well, picture this. They go off on a season cliffhanger. Fish Mooney's finally done. Penguin is just named in the lounge, the Iceberg Lounge. Nigma has finally left the police department, and he's like just his egg is cracked or whatever. He's finally starting to do the riddle bit. Mm-hmm. We come back to season 2 or season 3. 5 years later, 10 years later, we meet Gordon. He suddenly has a mustache. The Penguin's Iceberg Lounge is now the big hub for mob activity.
Yeah.
And now we missed the years of Bruce training off in wherever. But now he's back in Gotham. Everything's at an all-time high. We know what the stakes are. We know who the characters are. And now we just go with full-on Batman.
Yeah.
Would you like to see some sort of change like that? Or some sort of
I would still prefer it to not be a time skip.
Okay.
That's my only issue. Yeah. Okay. But it may be impossible to do it the way I would like it. I mean, at the very least, they'd need a hiatus or something for the kid to get older.
What if they did a time skip but alluded to what happened during the time skip like they did at the beginning of Arrow, where they showed how he was still on the island and did all his training on the island but still kept the current story plot going? Would that
the advantage there is that all of the actors were old enough that they could play themselves at the same point. Like if you did a time skip on Gotham, you've got to recast Ivy, you've got to recast Catwoman, Selena Kyle. You got to recast Batman, and everybody else has to at least look older. So now you're talking about aging makeup too, and some of them it'll be worse than others, obviously. But I don't know. It seems like a lot that I think the show doesn't necessarily need to go with, just because I think they've got a really strong show right now. But I would definitely love to see how they transition into the Batman phase, because it's going to have to happen at some point. If the show lasts long enough, Batman's going to be on that show. So, very interesting to see where that goes.
Cool.
All right. Well, we'll try to catch up with that show again next week, and hopefully more of us will have had a chance to see it finally. The next piece of news I want to get to here is the gaming news that just actually broke today, and this is kind of significant if any of you have been gaming since the 16-bit or the 32-bit era. SEGA laid off, well, they didn't lay off, they offered early retirement to 300 employees in their company and the Japan side of things today. This is news that just broke this morning. They are basically getting rid of their Japanese game developers, and they're going to focus on PC games and mobile games in an office that's based out of Europe. I know IGN was reporting on this, VG20 or 247 was reporting on this. I'm honestly kind of shocked. I mean, I'll be honest, I grew up on a Super Nintendo. I moved over to PlayStation. I didn't really have a lot of Sega in my life up until the company became a third-party developer. And then I kind of got caught up on some of the Sonic games. I got the Sonic All-Star or Arcade Collection and finally played Sonic 1, 2, and 3. Years removed from the original release, I wasn't as impressed with it as I was with Mario, but it's still kind of a big deal. I mean, they introduced the first 3D fighter with Virtua Fighter. House of the Dead was one of the classic arcade light gun games.
Rail shooters.
Rail shooters, yeah. So this is kind of big news. And again, I'm not a huge Sega gamer in particular, but I am kind of sad to see this sort of vestige of gaming past go away and to see that this company changed so much. So I guess my thoughts are I'm kind of sad about this. I mean, it really means gaming is changing, but I was kind of curious. You work games retail. Kind of what's your thoughts on this?
It is kind of sad. I don't think we're going to see the big games that Sega produced anymore, and there's going to be kind of like a missing a hole. There's going to be a void kind of left in the industry where, I mean, we saw it with Atari, we saw it with Namco. I mean, like, just these older companies just kind of go by the wayside. Hopefully we don't see Nintendo go that way or Sony or Microsoft go that way, but I mean, when times evolve, you got to keep up with it. I think with the Dreamcast that was kind of it for Sega in my eyes. I had a Dreamcast, I had a Sega Genesis, I had a Sega CD, a Sega Saturn. I had all the Sega
born and raised
consoles. Yeah, that and Nintendo were like always in my house. And like when Sega Dreamcast came around in '99, and you kind of saw it go up and then come right back down, and you knew as soon as they went all software, it was kind of an allusion to what's going to happen next. And I'm sad to see all the people lose their job. That's kind of my big thing. I don't want to see all these people that are in the industry lose their jobs. Hopefully they can find places at other publishing companies and maybe get their foot in the door somewhere else. I know Nintendo's kind of been pulling in a lot of Sega people. So
how much, and again from the retail side of things, how much do you think the debacle that was Alien, is it Isolation, was that the one that had the problem? Or Cloning Marines, Aliens Cloning Marines,
yeah.
How much do you think that factored into this?
I think it was a lot. I know a lot of the budget was cut, and then the production value just went down. Then the sales, they didn't see that side of it because of all the buggy issues and everything. I think that was a big hit too. I think that was a big blow. For a more recent blow, I think that was kind of the biggest thing. And
they've just been consistently making bad Sonic games.
Bad Sonic games, man.
Yeah.
Bad Sonic games. Sonic Boom.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. And I think they just lost a lot of their appeal. That's just kind of what it chalks up to be.
It's kind of sad, man.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about the state of Sega?
I don't have a huge Sega lineage, so the news doesn't impact me that much. But like I was just saying, basically, from an outsider perspective, it seems to me like Sega has not been the powerhouse that it had been since the Dreamcast, basically. And a lot of people said when the Dreamcast came out, it was ahead of its time, that basically the console was too good too soon. The market wasn't ready for it, and ever since then, Sega just hasn't recovered. I'd really like to see good new games coming out of Sega, and there's probably some Sega fanboy out there right now that's screaming at his monitor.
Yeah.
But I don't see it, and it's definitely a problem for them that I don't see it. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a Japanese game studio, right? Like one that's been around since way back. So I'm sure they're still going to make Sonic games for mobile. There's probably some sort of Sonic online, multiplayer game of some sort, MMO of some sort.
And the Japan development companies, I don't know if you've seen pictures or videos of TGS lately. It's kind of bare on that end.
Really?
So when you lose another big developer like that, it just kind of it takes it down a notch again. I mean, the biggest things that are coming out of it is like Konami's still hitting pretty strong. Capcom is doing all right.
Square seems to be missing the point, it seems like.
Yeah, and I mean, they have Final Fantasy 14, which is still going pretty strong. They have Type 0 coming out later on this year, and then they got the demo for 15, but they really haven't hit on anything since like Bravely Default, which was a DS game last year. And so you want to see them come up, and Western developers and even European developers are just kind of taking over the market, man. huge.
Mega Man creator Keiji Inafune has said in numerous interviews that he thinks that the Japanese model or the Japanese idea of how to build a game and what people want is very dated.
I've heard many say so.
So, you know, I think this is just kind of another sign of changing times. So, I don't think Sega's gone forever. Obviously, we're going to get them on mobile, but it's just we're not going to have them on console like we used to. So it's kind of sad. So, as we come to the end of the show here, I do want to kind of do pick of the week this week. I thought this would be kind of fun. You guys can pick anything you want on music, television, movies, whatever. I'll start with myself. My pick of the week, I think you guys should all check out Glenn Webb's action figure history of Wolverine. Glenn Webb is a toy reviewer that I really enjoy watching on YouTube, and I'll make sure that there's a link to his first video here in this video. But he's kind of bought or acquired as many Wolverines as he can possibly get, and he's kind of charting the visual history of the Wolverine figure, and I think it's a really, really cool video. He's got one part up right now. I think it's going to end up being 2 or 3 parts because it's so many figures that have come out. So I think it's pretty fun to see, and I'm looking forward to what more is coming from that. Jay, do you have a pick of the week?
Actually, yeah. My pick of the week is Dying Light. New game just came out this week. Very good. Had a couple friends pick it up. Told me that was great. Got my copy. I'm very excited to play it. It's zombies, which I love. It's action. It's shooting. It's parkour. It's day and night effects that make everything so intense. It's edge of your seat gaming, and that's something I was really looking for this week. So yeah, that's my pick of the week is Dying Light.
Awesome. And yours?
I'm gonna have to be lazy because I haven't gotten any new content this week, but I've been playing the heck out of Marvel Puzzle Quest.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm combining what are we playing and pick of the week, but yeah, I mean I've just been playing that like crazy. They really do a good job with those PvP events. I don't know if either of you have played it this week, but this one was particularly challenging too.
Well, I know one of the tiers where there was a stage, and I don't remember the name of it, but there's like all Mafia guys, and then you finally get to the one that's like Venom and Black Widow and someone else, and I just got rocked every time that I tried to fight the guys.
One of the last match on that one was like 3 level 80 guys, which is like the highest I've ever seen.
Isn't there like some sort of like hybrid guy with like purple crystals coming out of his back or something? That's the guy that kept thrashing my team.
Yeah, that's the Executioner.
The Executioner, yeah. So, I guess I've been gaming this week too, Marvel Puzzle Quest, and that's mostly what I've been gaming. And Jay, what have you been gaming? Dying Light, I guess?
Yeah, Dying Light, and then Dragon Age Inquisition.
Oh my goodness, I gotta get in. Gotta get to that
my
game.
Life, man.
My roommate Josh, when he was playing that, there was like a week straight where I just didn't even see him because he was playing that game constantly.
Yeah, it's really good. And I have 3 characters already made, and
nice.
Yeah, I put 10 hours in one, I put about 20 hours into another, and then
so you've started.
Yeah, I started, and I think I'm gonna go headstrong now into my warrior and just get him going. So
that's awesome.
That's
thanks for tuning in with us this week, guys. We're definitely going to be back next week with another show. Definitely let me know in the comments what you guys think of this show, how you'd like to see, if you want to see it broken up into parts, or if you like the whole show to kind of just kick back and watch. Definitely follow us on Twitter. You can catch Greg at
Yoshimitsu47.
I'm at D21Beast, and Jay is at
Big Nice 33.
All right, well, guys, it's been fun. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week.
I'll see you.